Be careful what you say out loud because there may be things that are listening. So this guy says that growing up, he was bullied a lot, he didn't have many friends, and he was always by himself. His dad had actually gone to the United States for work and they were in Mexico, and then his mom also left him with his grandparents because she also had to work. He says that his grandfather was really mean. It almost felt like his grandfather didn't like him, and in that town, everybody respected him. His grandfather needed like the smallest of excuse to beat him up, and that sometimes his grandmother would try to defend him, and his grandmother would also end up getting beaten up by the grandfather as well. With time, he ended up having so much resentment, so much anger, because not only was he not having a good time at home, but at school, he was also getting bullied. He says that the kids at school would scream at him, orphan, and that sometimes they wanted to beat him up, which is why most of the time he wanted to eat his lunch in like a hallway or like a corner of a building where nobody could see where he was. So one day, as he's sitting in the corner with nobody around him, he decided to tell the wind all of his problems aloud. He felt good letting it out, so the next following days he would do the same thing during lunch. He would go to be by himself and just say all of his problems out loud. He would always go to the same spot. He would again say his problems out loud, and that was until the wind actually spoke back to him. He explains that this voice almost went inside of his head and started giving him some advice. One day he was on a swing, swinging back and forth until a group of little boys and girls came and literally dropped him off of the swing. They told him to get away from their swings, and he ended up going back to that spot to be by himself because he was already humiliated enough. That is when the voice asked him, "Do you want me to take care of them for you?" He said yes, and that was when the voice tells him to draw a circle on the dirt that was in front of him, write the kids' names, and to cross out the names with an X. He didn't understand why he was listening to the voice because at that point he thought he was going a little bit crazy, but then on the same note, he thought to himself, hey, at least one person is worried about me. Somebody wants to take care of me. He drew the circles, he puts the names, he X'd them out, and then he just waited. Not a lot of time passed before some of the kids started having accidents. At first was one of the bullies who would play soccer. Everybody was around watching them play when out of nowhere he fell, and it was a bad fall, like a really bad angle, and he started crying from the pain. The little kid who had fallen and was crying and was saying that somebody had pushed him, but the coach was watching him at the time and said, no, nobody was around you, you just tripped and fell, and the kid insisted that somebody had pushed him really hard. Next was the annoying little girl who thought she was the owner of the swings. On this day, he was actually with a boy who was new to the school but was already getting bullied by the rest of the kids. He actually told this kid about his what he was calling imaginary friend, but the kid didn't believe him. He wanted to prove to his new friend that what he was saying was true, so he told him, okay, watch. He drew a circle on the dirt, he put the name of that girl who had just taken them away from the swings, and he drew an X on top of her name, and he says, okay, now watch her. Minutes pass, and one of the swings that the girl was on, the chain actually broke. She went flying and lost her breath when she landed on the ground. Obviously, all the teachers went running to this little girl. After she was able to breathe again, they said she was fine, she didn't need to go see the nurse. And when he turned to look at his new friend, his friend was like pale, and his friend asked him, how did you do this? The bell rang, so they had to go back inside the school, but he promised his friend that he would tell him how a different day. There was another day where he was really sad and he was crying because he missed his mom so much and he really wanted her to come back for him, and that was when the voice tells him, hey, don't worry, your mom's gonna come back to you very soon, okay? And that is exactly what happened. Around 2 or 3 days after that, his mom came back saying that she just didn't want to be away from him anymore. His mom told him that she might be needing his help in order for them to not be broke or homeless, and he agreed to help her. He explains that one of the worst episodes came after that. There was this kid in that town that was very respected because his mother was like a ringleader. So obviously because of this little kid who was also his age felt that he was untouchable. So on some of the nights in that town, people would have flea markets, and he agreed to help his mom sell food at that place. They had ran out of a certain ingredient, so his mom asked him to go get more, and he agreed, and that was when he bumped into this little boy and his bully ass friends. They were all telling him that they should fight like one-on-one, but he knew that if he agreed to fight, it wouldn't be on one-on-one fair fight. They were gonna jump him. Unfortunately, he didn't have a choice. He started fighting, and then all 7 of them basically jumped him, and he doesn't even know how he got out of there, but he was able to get up and just run away from them. He ran straight to his mom, and obviously his mom saw that he was beaten up, but he didn't want to talk about it, so she let it go for the moment. The following day, they had to go to school, and that little boy also went to school with them, and for some reason really hated him to the point where he brought a pew pew to school and threatened him with it, saying that he was going to end his life. He explained that the teachers actually took that gun away from the kid, but the kid was telling him that it wasn't over. The school did end up calling the mom, telling her what happened, and when he got home, the mom told them, we need to get out of here, we're moving away from this town, because apparently the boy's mom was very popular, like people knew her because she was not a good person, and if that boy hated his kid, that means that that lady was gonna come after the family. The mom also explained that she needed to leave because if somebody had done something to her son, nobody in that town would do anything about it because they were all scared of that lady. He did end up leaving that school and they moved back into the city. As they're leaving this town, that's when he heard the voice again, and the voice tells him, please leave in peace, I'll take care of them. A few months after moving away from that town, they received some news that, crime lady, the mom, the son that threatened him, and an older son had actually died in a car accident. Apparently they were driving down one of the roads out in the middle of nowhere when the car just flipped and exploded, and they were all basically burned alive. He didn't want that. He only wanted for his friend to scare them, not necessarily take their lives. Till this day, he doesn't know if maybe that was just a coincidence or if it really was his imaginary friend. What do you guys think?
What if you were having the most terrifying sleep paralysis incidents of your life just to find out that it was not sleep paralysis, it was real? That is what happened to this girl. I hope you're not watching this alone. I hope you're not sleeping alone tonight. So Jasmine's parents were divorced, and when she was around 15 years old, she moved home to her father's house. She had a little brother that was 13 years younger than her, so he was very small when they moved in. So in the beginning of living in this house, she didn't really experience much. The one thing that she did experience, though, was she started getting sleep paralysis, and she had never had sleep paralysis before. So things started off small. So she would go to sleep, and then she would wake up in the middle of the night. She couldn't move. She would look over, and her door would be open, which was weird because she always kept her door closed. She kind of decides to brush this off, though, but time goes on, and her sleep paralysis just gets worse. She started to see things, and this scared her. So she started reading up on this, and she found out that it's sleep paralysis and that it's normal to see things in sleep paralysis, that you can hallucinate. There was one problem. She could not get over what she was seeing, and she could remember every single detail the next day, and it terrified her. She would wake up, she would not be able to move, and the door would just slowly creak open. She's lying on her back and she can't move. So she wants to look at the door, but she can't look at the door because she can't move. So she's trying to look at the door with the corner of her eye, when suddenly a small dark-haired girl starts crawling on all fours towards her bed, crouches down in this weird position, and then just tilts her head this way and smiles. She said that she has never felt so unsafe and so unsettled in her life, and what was worse is what the girl looked like. Her eyes gone, just sockets of darkness, and she could feel her malicious intent. Now, a full year goes by with this happening almost nightly, and soon she starts to wake up with her door open in the morning. Now, you think that's bad. It just gets creepier. Now, during this time, her little brother gets bigger and bigger, and he starts to walk and talk. Now, she would spend a lot of time babysitting him, especially at night, because her father worked the night shift. And one night, she's babysitting him, and she's just sitting in her room, and he's sitting in the living room, and she hears him giggling and talking to somebody. And something really weird is happening to me right now. My phone is getting so hot, I can't hold it anymore. Look at my fingers. Look at my fingers. That's from holding my phone because it doesn't have a case on it right now. I just had to put my case on. That's insane. We'll talk about that later. So she decides to go into the living room to see who he's talking to and why he's giggling like that. And so she walks into the living room and he looks at her and he has this happy face on when suddenly it just falls and he looks terrified. Now this really weirded her out because he had never been scared of her before. Even when he was in trouble, he was never scared of her. So she goes and sits down next to him and she asks him, who are you talking to? What are you doing? He just keeps looking behind her. Like 3 or 4 times. He looks terrified and he is not answering her. And finally, after like the 3rd or 4th time, he says, she doesn't like you. Then he looks behind her one more time before placing his little finger on his mouth and just goes, so later on that night, she goes to bed and she wakes up in the middle of the night out of nowhere to see her door open and a red sensor light illuminating just this little child. So this really terrified her until she realized that it was just her little brother. So she gets up and she goes and asks him what he's doing and why he is up. So he doesn't answer her at first, and then he just goes like this. and points behind her. She said in this moment, she has never been so scared in her entire life. So she decides to turn around. And when she swings around, she sees nothing. So she's like, why are you pointing? Nothing's there. And he starts to get frustrated with her and angry at her because she doesn't believe him. So she decides to go take him back to bed, and she's trying to press him for more information. That's when she tells him that a dark-haired girl won't let him sleep and keeps asking him to play. She said that once he mentioned the dark-haired part, that a shiver ran down her spine, and she said, that was probably the truest fear I've ever felt. But she doesn't want to scare him, obviously, so she just tells him to go to sleep and tells him to tell her that he isn't old enough to play at night. This makes him smile because they had a little inside joke about him having to go to sleep early and her being allowed to go to parties late at night. But after this incident, things started to happen like this often. He would just be standing in the hallway at night talking to somebody. So she tells her dad about this, and her dad just kind of brushes it off. He's like, listen, he's a kid. He has a big imagination, except for it gets really bad here. One night, she has sleep paralysis, the same as she always does. She wakes up the next morning and she has these deep red scratch marks going down her leg. You could see where the marks had started and ended. And this is when she finally had enough and just asked her dad for help. Now, he didn't really believe in any of this stuff, but he did have a friend that was a medium. So the medium comes by, and the medium tells her to go in her room and have a conversation with her little brother, and the medium is going to record it. She said that she does this, and later on when they went back and listened to the recording, they were actually able to catch a girl's voice saying, hello. She said it definitely wasn't her voice. It was way too high pitched and way too perfect. She said that it was so perfect that it was almost clearer than their voices. So at this point, she just wants to get the hell out of there. So she moves out of there as fast as she could. Unfortunately, this does not help, and things get worse. So she moves into a house in the forest. There's at least 2 to 3 kilometers between her and the nearest neighbor. You had to go by the house no matter what if you wanted to go into the forest. She said that she started to hear footsteps walking in the hallways. She would hear hushed voices from rooms that she wasn't in. Even her dog didn't like the forest, which she didn't know or understand until one night. So the dog runs away, and she is thinking in her head, with all the wildlife, he's gonna run into the forest. So she goes out to look for him. Now, this is not in America. So in her country, there are no real predators. She said that the biggest threat is foxes. So she walked and called for him for about 30 minutes. And suddenly she sees eyes reflecting back at her from further into the bushes. Now she's relieved at this point because she's thinking that it's her dog. But as she gets closer, this thing stands up on 2 legs. She said that this thing was taller than her, even from meters away, and suddenly she starts to hear whistling behind her. She said it was like this slow and deliberate whistling, which froze her in her spot. She knew for a fact that she was the only one in the forest. Nobody had come by the house for hours, and people weren't allowed in the forest after sunset anyways. She said at this point, she just effing ran, her exact words, and she ran until she reached her house. So she gets to her house and she notices something. There are no lights left on in her house, and she left them on purpose because it makes it easier for her to see her way home from the forest. Her dog didn't even end up going into the forest. He instead went into town, which was kilometers away. Now she thought that this was really weird that he went into town because she had never walked that way with him, and she would assume that he would go into the forest because there's animals in the forest. So she decides to move again because she's like, I'm not staying in some haunted forest, not realizing that moving again was not going to help her. So she moves into her current apartment, and things just keep happening. Now she has security cameras since her dog has separation anxiety and doesn't like being alone. So it started with her dog actually this time. She's at work one day and she's watching the live footage of her house on her phone when he suddenly got up and started dancing and jumping towards the door as if he was greeting somebody at the door. Then he starts slowly walking towards the bed, and he just starts growling viciously. She said she has never heard him growl like that before. She says there's been other times when she's seen a human-sized shadow following him around the apartment. She won't be able to find her stuff, and that it will turn up in the weirdest places. And she found a sentimental small vase stuffed into one of her shoes. She says she has no idea how this is possible because those 2 things have never been in reach of each other. She said the most uncomfortable thing that she's ever experienced in this new place, though, is when she was in the shower. She said she was just showering like normal when suddenly she starts to hear these heavy footsteps. They're so heavy, they're vibrating the floor, and they feel like they are right outside the shower curtain. So she rips the shower curtain open, getting ready to see somebody when nobody is there. So she brushes it off and she closes the shower curtain. 30 seconds later, same thing. She said it was so heavy that she really could not brush it off this time, and it really felt like a big, heavy man was walking, but it just took 2 steps. So that was the end of the email. What do you guys think about that story?
This is Nikki's submission for Spooky Scary Storytime about a creepy house she rented in New Mexico, and I think this is the first story we've had on Spooky Scary Storytime coming from New Mexico, which is surprising actually. But Nikki said it was 2017, she had just arrived in New Mexico to her first duty station, and she had to find a place to live. And so she ended up finding this single-wide trailer right off the highway near the base, but it was the only place that she could find that would allow her 2 pit bulls. And the guy that was renting the place was kind of a slumlord. Place was kind of a wreck. She said, picture the Courage the Cowardly doghouse, but the place was cheap and the price was right, and she was like, you know what, it's only about a half mile from the base, I'm good. On moving in, there was a ton of cleaning and painting that she had to do because the place was just a wreck. So one of the first things that she did after cleaning the entire thing from top to bottom was to paint the bedroom, just to make the place feel a little bit more homey. Decided on a reddish copper color to paint the walls in the main bedroom, but noticed that there was this strange splatter pattern that would come through the paint no matter how many times she went over. After 3 or 4 coats, the splatter pattern on the wall did go away, but came back a few months later. I don't know if that was related or not, but maybe worth pointing out. Once Nikki got the place cleaned up and repainted, it started to feel more homey, and she was pretty comfortable being there. And the way that this place was set up was it was a 3-bed, 2-bath, and the main bedroom and bathroom were off of the living room next to the kitchen, and then off of the kitchen there was another hallway that led to 2 guest bedrooms and a guest bathroom. One of the guest bedrooms they were using for a place for guests to sleep, and the other one was for storage. Only thing off-putting about this place after she had it cleaned up and repainted was that she had this very unsettled feeling anytime she would pass by the guest bedroom. Sometimes she walked by it to use the guest bathroom because if you were in the kitchen, that was closer than going to the main bathroom off of her bedroom. She said she just felt watched, and because there was not usually someone staying with her, she had a desk in there. So when she first moved in, she used to study in that room, but she always had this strange feeling of someone peering in at her from the New Mexico desert outside the window. She would look out and there would be nobody out there, and she thought maybe it was just because it was just so dark outside, so she hung curtains, but it didn't really help that feeling. Every time she was in there, she just felt this oppressive presence around her, and she couldn't concentrate, so eventually she just gave up studying in there and kept the door closed. She said that even keeping the door closed didn't really help her fear around this room, and she often ended up running past the door at full speed the way a little kid would when they think something is chasing them in the dark. Said she had only mentioned this feeling to her wife, who is normally very logical and doesn't believe in anything supernatural, and she was surprised when her wife agreed and said, yeah, I don't like that room either, it feels like something creepy's in there. But they had 2 really good friends, this couple named Maria and Forrest, and one night Maria and Forrest were over, they were out back drinking by the bonfire, and they were having the conversation of who was going to be the DD for the night. And that's when Nikki says, oh, it's okay, you guys can keep partying, you guys can just stay in our spare room. And Maria just looks at her and without batting an eye says, I'm not sleeping in there, it feels like someone's watching me in there. Months later, Forrest and Maria had spent the night after another bonfire when everybody was out back drinking. They had stayed up late, and Forrest and Maria had ended up sleeping on the couch. In the morning, Nikki goes out to make everybody breakfast and coffee, and Forrest is just acting a little strange, and she's like, what's up? What's going on with you? You're acting weird. And Forrest is like, this is going to sound crazy. He's like, but when I was a little kid, I used to see this ghostly lady walking around my house, and I always just kind of played it off as my imagination because I was a little kid. But last night, for the first time in 30 years, I saw her walking down your hallway. He said when he said this, it sent shivers down her spine. He and her wife ended up staying in that house for 3 years, and she said that even though they would never say anything, anytime they had guests stay in that room, they would complain of feeling watched. But fast forward to the last 6 months of them living there, Maria and Forrest are staying over again, and they're sleeping on the couch, and it's 6 in the morning, and Nikki's wife is shaking her, trying to wake her up, and Nikki rolls over and she's confused, and she's like, what's going on? And her wife says, I think Forrest was just standing in the doorway watching us sleep. Bedroom door was cracked, and her wife said that she saw a man's silhouette standing in the doorway. So naturally, Nikki wakes up and she goes out in the living room and she's accusing Forrest of being a creep. He pops up from a dead sleep on the couch, and he's confused, and he's like, what are you talking about? And he's looking at her like she has 4 heads. About a month later, on a night that they had no friends staying over, Nikki's wife wakes her up again, and she says, there's someone in the doorway watching us. They looked over at the door and they could see the tall silhouette of what seemed to be a man. It was dark, their eyes could have been playing tricks on them, and so they try to play this off. But after that night, Nikki's wife insists on sleeping with the door closed. That became routine. Every night when Nikki and her went to bed, they would make sure the door was closed and locked. Until one morning, right before they moved out, that they woke up and the door was cracked open. Nikki's wife was asking her frantically, are you sure you didn't wake up to open the door? Are you sure you didn't go use the guest bathroom? And Nikki's like, why would I use the guest bathroom? We have a bathroom in here. Shortly after that incident, they moved out, and after the last box was packed and they were on their way to their new place, that's when Nikki's wife told her something horrible. She told Nikki the reason that she had been so adamant about finding out if Nikki was the one who had opened the door was because the night they woke up to the door open was the night that she saw somebody open the door, come in, and stand over her while she was sleeping. Nikki said, honestly, I'm glad that she didn't tell me about it until after we moved out, because I don't know how I would have handled that. I don't know if I would have been able to sleep in that house had she told me while we were still living in there. But It was so scary, so terrifying, so deeply unsettling to her wife that it took months after they moved out of the house for her wife to even talk to Nikki about what they thought it could have possibly been, and they still don't know. So, who do you think was peeking in their bedroom? The Hat Man, shadow people, something else entirely? Are there legends in New Mexico that I need to know about? Let me know your thoughts, and if you have a story you think nobody else would believe, we would love to hear it.
Somebody submitted a spooky story saying that they saw my story time about the devil living in LA. And they said, child, hold my purse. Because apparently they've encountered the devil in New York City. We're gonna call the person who submitted the story Deja. So Deja said that she never believed that the devil lived in New York. She always thought if the devil existed at all, he would be somewhere much more obvious. So like a mansion, a church basement or something. Just some abandoned place where you would expect evil to be. But according to Deja, the devil doesn't hide in New York City. He actually blends in. So Deja moved to New York in 2018 with nothing but a suitcase and a dream. Everyone told her that her dream was unrealistic, but she was determined to make it big. Acting, networking, success, all of it just seemed out of her reach. Deja would work brutal hours, slept on couches, and despite all the work that she put in, nothing. But she would watch the people around her just blow up overnight. And at this point, Deja starts to wonder, what is it that these people have that she doesn't? Well, she would later find out to actually be careful what you wish for, because what these people had was something much darker and sinister. So around the times that Deja started to have these questions, that's when she met this guy. Now Deja says she won't say his name, but if you're in certain circles, fashion, media, finance, entertainment, you've probably seen his face. He's always well dressed, always calm. So Deja says that he didn't approach her like a villain. He approached her like a solution. So they met at a private rooftop event in Manhattan, and it was invitation only. There were no phones allowed. Everybody that was there was somebody or about to be. Well, he asked her simple questions at first: where she was from, what she wanted, and what she felt was owed to her after all that suffering. And then he said something that made her stomach drop. He says, New York rewards the brave, but it devours the patient. Well, a few weeks later, the guy invited Deja to something called a circle. Now, it wasn't like a cult or a club or anything. It was a society. People who understood how the city really works. The meeting was underground. Literally. She said, a private room beneath a members-only bar in Soho. No windows, dim lighting, everyone wore black, and no one used their real name. They were talking about exchange. They weren't talking about money or favors either. They were referring to energy, intention, and allegiance. They said nothing is free in this city. Every rise requires a fall. And if you don't choose the sacrifice, city will choose one for you. And that's when Deja realized what they were really offering. And Deja says, y'all think this would look like a regular ritual with like signing stuff and things like that? She said it was none of that. You just have to agree, basically. You have to agree to stop questioning where the opportunities come from. Agree to stop feeling guilt when doors open for you but slam shut for others. Agree to stop believing in coincidence. And once you say yes, things start happening fast. Very fast. She says within her time in the circle, she said you will never believe who comes in and out of the circle. Think high profile celebrities. Think politicians. This story is literally so long and you just won't believe the details that this girl says in the story. I know y'all hate part 2s, but I promise I'll be back with part 2, okay? I'm really tired and I got y'all tonight. Just leave a comment for part 2. We'll drop part 2 of this video as soon as it hits 10,000 views. You better share and leave a comment if you want part 2 soon.
We listen. We don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me tell you guys a story time of this friend of mine who went and slept with a blesser, and she came back and her vajayjay was rattling like a rattlesnake. So y'all, one day I'm sitting with this friend of mine, right? We're talking whatever, and she tells me that, listen, somebody DM'd me on Instagram, and you know, this person seems like a hotshot. They seem like they're moneyed. And I say, girl, what? She shows me the person and I'm like, whoa, this person's got money, right? Because listen, I think the first red flag that this person does not really care about his money was he texted my friend on some, hey, how are you, beautiful? Would you like to be my girlfriend? And my friend obviously responded because she saw what she saw on Instagram. She's no saint, you know. She's no saint. She saw the money and she said, going for it. And after this, they spoke for just like a couple of minutes. And then the guy was literally like, listen, give me your bank account. Let me give you money so that you go shopping. My friend gives the bank account. Guy sends her 10K immediately. And so my friend was showing me all these conversations, and she's like, she has 10K. She's like, baby, let's go out. She told me that, like, she gave me a budget, y'all. She was like, I'm gonna spend 2K for clothes and then we'll go and eat. I said, girl, ooh. They were spending this guy's 10K, and I tell my friend, like, you need to be careful. Sometimes these people use traditional things so that they can gain their wealth. And what if its snake wants you? Now it wants new blood and you are the sacrifice. Don't do it. My friend is like, yeah, I'll think about it. She went to, yeah, I'll think about it, to this particular Saturday where she disappeared the entire day, and she came back and she told me she went to the guy and she came back and the guy gave her 50K. She obviously lied to me and told me that she and this guy were not intimate, right? Because she would come back like with money. Sometimes she comes back with clothes. Like, she was looking chic, but she would always tell me, oh, you know, me and this guy have not really gotten intimate. He said he wants to get to know me. And I would side-eye her, because why are you lying? Why are you lying? And y'all, one day out of the blue, she came to my house and we were talking, right? Usually I am excited to hear her stories and what's been happening in her life, but this time she just irritated my soul. Like, every single thing that she was saying, like, was just irritating. It just annoyed me, right? To the point where I was like, yo, you know, my mom asked me to do something for her and I have to actually go to the mall in like the next 10 minutes. I forgot, right? And she was like, oh no, like, can you just chill for a bit? Like, I'm so bored at home and I've not seen you for the longest. And I was just like, girl, no, like, no, go home, you know, go home. And mind you, she was on a vacation with this guy not so long ago, but I was just like, please go home. And she started to annoy me. Even when I seen her on the street, I stopped talking to her, yo, because I was just avoiding her. She was just irritating me. And I was not the only one that's seen this. Like, even other people too was like, they would ask me like, where's your friend? And I'd be like, I don't know where she is. And like, your friend is so irritating. Like, something about her is just, ugh, it's icky, you know? And I was like, I feel the same way. Like, I don't know what's happening. Okay, fine. I don't remember when it was, but it was during the week. My mom had left for work and I'm alone in the house. This girl texts me in like with a sense of emergency, like, hey girl, where are you? Is your mom still home? I'm like, oh, my mom's not home. What's happening? You know, what's happening? She's like, can I please come to your house? Mind you, it was like 8 a.m. and I said, alright, cool, my mom's not here, come. She comes to my house and she gets to my house. I open the door for her. She sits down. She opens her legs, and this rotten egg smell hit my face. And I was like, ugh, ain't no way. I didn't even hide it. That was my reaction. I was like, girl, what is going on with you? What is that? Oh, she's like, yo, I think I have an infection. You know, she's just giving me the runaround. And I'm like, infection? Did you go to the doctor? Because I've never heard of an infection that makes you smell like rotten eggs. You know, I know BV makes you smell like rotten fish. It makes you smell like fish. You know, I know a yeast infection doesn't really have a smell. I don't know, but those are the two that I know. Like, and you know, so you know, I'm like, girl, what is that? She eventually tells me the truth, and she's like, so busy girl. Oh, before she tells me the truth, I almost forgot. She stands up, guys, and she starts to shake her waist, and a rattling sound comes out of her thing. I was like, no way. She's like, wait, are you making that sound? She's like, no, the sound is coming from down there. I said, what? She's like, yeah, bro, shake my legs. She sits down and I shake her legs because I think she's playing with me. And baby, she took off her pants and obviously the smell got worse. Oh, it got really worse. And I was like, my dear, what is going on? She's like, I don't know what happened, but this started right after the vacation with the guy. She's like, this guy was sleeping with her from Monday to Sunday, from the time they went from vacation till the time they came back. And also she says some of the things that happened on that vacation she doesn't remember, and she doesn't know how. She only remembers during the day, but when it comes to the nights, it's foggy. Shane, I was like, girl, that's crazy. And I said, you know what, you should tell your mom. She was like, yes, that's why she came to me. She wants me to go and tell her mom for her. We get there, chilled. I tell her mom the whole story, guys. I do not act like I was not a catalyst, low-key, because I did tell her that the first time she got the money, we went and spent it. But I told her to think about it, to think about the fact of going to sleep with this guy, but she didn't, right? And you know, the mom was shouting at us, whatever, and they took her to a traditional healer, obviously, and I was there. When we got there, the traditional healer obviously said what the obvious, that this man had like you sleeping with his snake, and also he basically had a snake that was put inside him spiritually. He has a spiritual snake, and he slept with you and he took your luck. This is why people find you irritating. This is why this is happening, blah blah blah. So fortunately for her, the smell went away when they gave her whatever they gave her. Unfortunately, she is still not likable, guys. Like, she has a bad luck like nobody's business. When she was busy with this particular place, that she had a job, and all of a sudden she lost that job. Don't know how. Like, every single time she dates people, she always dates the worst kind of people that bring out the worst in her. Like, sometimes they abuse her, sometimes it's a serial cheater. You know, it's just sad. She was pregnant not so long ago. She lost that child. It's crazy. She can't find a job. She's constantly sad. Like, you can tell that she's sad. She can't find a job. Relationships are failing her. People in her family are treating her otherwise. The only person that's able to tolerate her is her mom. She doesn't know what's going on. And obviously that man took her luck. And this luck that he took from her is very visible, because she's still pretty, but like she just has no luck. Like, she has really bad luck. Like, it's sad. Until the date, she's still going to traditional healers trying to find a solution, and nothing is happening. Nothing is coming up. I don't know. I also don't know myself, because really, you know, me and her, y'all, we do still talk, you know. We do still talk, and I try my best to pray for her, but because I don't know what's going on with her, so yeah.
This story is about a man that did not follow his mom's advice and ended up regretting it for the rest of his life. He's actually the one that submitted the story. For the sake of the story, let's call him Mateo. This also took place in Colombia. When Mateo was in college, a lot of the times he would help out at his dad's investment firm. Like, during the summertime, during his break, he would go in there and help out just to, like, gain experience. That summer, when he started working at his dad's firm, he ran across one of the employees. Her name was Pilar. He says that the moment he saw her, like, it was almost like time stood still. He said that that was literally the most beautiful woman that he had ever seen in his life. Not long after he started doing small talk with her, he decided to ask her out to see if maybe she wanted to go grab something to eat or like coffee or whatever. Pilar immediately shut him down. She wanted absolutely nothing to do with him. Mateo pretty much accepted it and figured that she probably just wasn't interested in him, and continued on. For the most part, he usually kept his head down anytime he was working at his dad's firm. He tried to blend in with everyone else as best as he could. As time went on, I guess word got around of who Mateo was. I guess someone figured out his last name and figured out that he had the same last name as the owner, which is when it came out that he was actually the owner's son. Lo and behold, the minute that comes out, Pilar automatically becomes extremely interested in him and starts to pursue him. She started bringing him coffee every morning. She would bring him snacks. She would stop at his desk. She would start conversation with him, asking him about his life and his future and his family, like wanting to like start a friendship with him. For the most part, Mateo tried to just be polite with her, but was very resistant, especially being that he had asked her out previously, and it wasn't until she found out of like his background that she became interested. That completely turned them off. So he would just be polite, but she continued day in and day out until one day Mateo finally gave in and they went out to dinner. Dinner went the way that you would expect. They talked, they had a couple drinks, they ate a little bit. Mateo doesn't know exactly what happened at dinner, but all he knows is that he's at dinner, having drinks with her, talking, and a snap of a finger, he's in a hotel room with her. Like, he has no idea what happened from the time they left the restaurant to the time they got to the hotel. But all he knew was that it just flashed by and he's now laying in bed with her, and he feels completely super attached to this person that he barely knows. Things moved extremely fast between them after that. They became a couple, and Mateo went and took Pilar to meet his mom. The moment his mom met Pilar, she didn't like her. She didn't trust her. She said that she gave off like como que era una oportunista, like she was taking advantage of Mateo sort of vibes, that she was only interested in his money. Mateo, of course, was completely blinded by love and didn't want to like believe his mom, and pretty much turned his mom away and told her to stay out of it, that was his life and that Pilar was the love of his life. Not long after, Pilar gets pregnant, so Mateo goes ahead and marries her without a prenup. No prenup, he just married her because he felt like it was the right thing to do. Everything was okay, the wedding went fine, but right after the wedding, Pilar changed. She went completely cold towards him. She couldn't stand him. She wanted nothing to do with him. At first, he thought that it was because of the pregnancy. I guess he had done research where I guess whenever a woman becomes pregnant, sometimes she wants nothing to do with like her partner. So he thought that was what was going on with her. That it was like all her hormones that were making her not want to have anything to do with her. So he tried to be as patient with her as he possibly could. But as time went on, it just got worse. Then one day when he got home, Pilar handed him divorce papers. She wanted nothing to do with him, wanted half of his assets, one of the companies, and wanted a ton of money in alimony. Mateo literally felt like he was watching this happen to someone else. Like he had like an out-of-body experience. He went to his mom for help, and his mom took him to a bruha. Mateo was skeptical at first. He didn't believe in any of that stuff. But when the bruja sat down and started reading the cards to him, she pretty much explained the situation before he even had a chance to tell the bruja what was going on. The bruja told him that there was a person in his life, somebody close to him, a female, that was using him and only wanted to drain him. That this person had a boyfriend the whole time on the side. Like, she had a partner on the side the whole time. That she only tried to trap him in order to get, like, his money. They did a cleansing, and La Bruja went ahead and put this jar together where she put a picture of Pilar in there, and she pretty much told Mateo that she would take care of it, that everything that was done to him would go back to its original sender. Mateo was not 100% convinced on what La Bruja had said, so he went ahead and hired a private investigator who very quickly confirmed that Pilar did in fact have a boyfriend, that she had had a boyfriend for a very long time. A year goes by. At this point, they're already divorced. Pilar ended up getting one of the companies. She gets a ton of money on alimony. She also gets a ton of money on child support. She goes ahead and marries the other guy, the boyfriend that she had the whole time. She becomes public with him and acts like Mateo never even existed, and even gives him a really hard time about seeing his son. Mateo felt like he was completely, like, it was like a loss, until one day Pilar's sister, her older sister, shows up at his doorstep holding his son, who's about a year old at this time. Apparently Pilar had been arrested because she had unalived her boyfriend. According to what the sister said, Pilar had poisoned the boyfriend and was now in jail. No one exactly knows why she did it, but Mateo believes, or at least from what he heard, it was a fit of rage that she had because I guess the boyfriend, or not her now husband, was trying to leave her. In order to get him to not leave, she decided to unalive him. Long story short, after she went to jail, she ended up being sentenced to like 20 plus years. Like, she's not going to be coming out anytime soon. He ends up getting full custody of his son, which means that he no longer has to pay the child support. The alimony checks stop. And that being that she was now incarcerated, he was able to go to court and get most, not all, but most of his assets back. To this day, Mateo believes that the night that he agreed to go to dinner with her, she must have put something in his food in order to get him to completely black out, go back with her to the hotel, and make him completely blinded. Like, even though he was like obviously super attracted to her, like, he would have never just married her like that, and went against like his family's wishes in the way that he did. Like, he was being completely manipulated. So if your parents don't like someone, I guarantee that 9 times out of 10 they're usually right. I promise you.
Let's read another true and scary story. This one is called Mrs. Longneck. This is a story I've kept between myself and the others involved. Everyone I've ever told has made me feel like I'm crazy, but I'll never forget what truly happened that night. Back when I was 9, I used to live at my grandma's house. It's a very spacious house, but it's also very old, built sometime in the 1940s. At night, it always gave me an eerie vibe, but I just thought it was my mind playing tricks on me. Until the day I finally proved myself wrong. So my cousin, my uncle, and I were having our Saturday movie night. That night, we decided to watch Coraline. It's been my favorite since I was a child. My cousin and I were talking about the movie while my uncle went to the kitchen to get us ice cream. Out of nowhere, everything went dead silent. The TV turned off along with the lights. Keep in mind, they had just gotten the electricity rewired, so it was brand new. The TV wasn't old either, so we were completely confused. There was nothing that could have caused this, so we were frightened, to say the least. My cousin looked at me and said, "Did you hear that?" My eyes immediately widened, and I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I heard clicking, like the sound someone makes when they crack their knuckles. As I was listening to the noise, I heard my uncle scream from the kitchen, "What the F?" It startled us because of how loud it was, and my uncle doesn't get scared easily. That scream sounded like pure terror. I ran into the kitchen, my cousin following behind me. I saw my uncle on the floor, panicking. I asked him what was wrong, and he said, "There's someone in the house." I immediately freaked out and began sobbing. He rushed us downstairs since we figured this person was upstairs and we needed to turn the power back on. Little did he know this mistake would traumatize us forever. He went to the opposite side of the basement trying to find a light source. Then that's when it started, the clicking. It gives me an icky feeling just thinking about it. My cousin and I looked at each other and squeezed each other's hands. There was no sign of my uncle yet, so we didn't know what was making the sound. Mind you, we had no animals and obviously nothing was on. That's when the mumbling started. It sounded like disembodied chanting. I began crying out of fear and stress. My uncle came running towards us, yelling, "Get upstairs now, go, go, go." He ran up first, then my cousin, then me. I was wearing long flared sweatpants and slightly tripped on them, which made me fall behind a bit. That's when I heard it. It sounded like someone on all fours climbing up the stairs. I turned my neck, and that's when I saw her. Mrs. Longneck. She was freakishly pale, almost blue. She had long, greasy black hair and her nails were yellow and dirty. Her skin looked like it was decomposing. But most importantly, her neck was what stuck with me the most. It was at least 1.5 feet long. I stumbled up the stairs, and that's when I felt it, an agonizing sharp pain in my ankle. I looked back and saw her nail digging into my skin. I was frozen and didn't know what to do. Luckily, my uncle snatched me up the stairs and slammed the basement door shut. We ended up calling the cops and having them search the house. No one, no tracks, no signs of forced entry, just my blood splattered on the staircase. To this day, I refuse to go into that house. I still have sleep paralysis dreams of her. I live in fear, wondering if she'll ever come back. It's almost like this thing lured you guys into the basement because it knew that if it turned off the lights on the TV, y'all would come down into the basement and check the electricity, which is horrifying. And I'm really glad that you did not go back into that house after that experience, and I don't blame you for still having sleep paralysis dreams about Mrs. Longneck. Thank you so much for sending this one in, and I'm so sorry that you feel like she still haunts you and is still in your sleep paralysis dreams. I'm hoping that one day she will finally leave you alone. And if you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me and I will get to them if I can, and I will see you in the next one.
Let's read some scary stories from people who work the night shift. Used to clean a church alone late at night. There was a piano upstairs, which I thought was broken, which was why it was upstairs in the attic. One night I started hearing piano music from the attic. I immediately assumed someone was up there pranking me, so I went up and there was no one. When I turned to walk away after realizing no one was there, I heard a loud bang behind this metal door, which I assume was an attic closet. Never worked the night shift again. Asked the one other person that worked night shifts. She confirmed weird shit happening was normal. I was working at a middle school as a night shift custodian. I cleaned a long U-shaped wing full of classrooms every weeknight. I'd already locked up one set of doors to the wing and was about to lock the ones at the other end of the U. I made the full lap around the wing, and I'd been cleaning there all night alone, and came to the end of the hallway where the doors to the rest of the school were. When I shut the lights off, the dark silhouette of what looked like a child ran from across the end of the hallway from left to right. There were doors down there, but I'd just locked them all up and no one was around. I was so creeped out, I locked the doors connecting the wing to the rest of the school and ran to my car. I always felt like I was seeing things out of the corner of my eye working there at night, but that was the most visible, for sure thing I saw at that place. 2 things happened when I was an overnight baker in a downtown area. Parking overnight is free in this downtown area, but it can be crowded. First come, first served. This one night I parked a block away, and as I was walking to my job, this young guy is riding his bike around me in my car. He followed me close to my job. I was quickly able to get in the building. That morning when my boss came in at 4 a.m., he told me about his weird experience of this kid on a bike riding around him in his car. That guy did this for a few days until the weekend, getting closer each time. The last time he tried to hit my boss with his bike, but my boss managed to hop between 2 vehicles and walk away safely. We never saw that guy again. In summer, I would sit outside on a well-lit and busy street, and on this side, at the opposite end, was a federal building with nothing between us but solid building. So this one night I'm relaxing, and I look towards the federal building and see a person completely in shadow walking my way. Even walking under the streetlight, I couldn't see the features of this person. I quickly went in and waited to see who passed. No one passed at all in the next 10 minutes. I've never felt such malevolence from a person who was just walking. It still bothers me 15 years later. I work in a prison. When I was new, I was working overtime one night in a housing unit that has seen a lot of death. It was well after midnight, and all of the offenders were supposed to be in their cells. Since this was a medium security prison, the offenders still had access to leave their cell to use the communal bathroom at night. Well, I was going in for the 2 a.m. count. I watched an offender walk down the stairs from the second level and into the bathroom. I stood at the entrance to the bathroom and yelled in to ask them what cell they were in so I could add an extra body to that cell for my count, but I got no answer. I then walked into the bathroom and searched everywhere but found absolutely nobody. I told one of my coworkers about what happened, and the first thing they asked me was he tall and skinny with long dreads? When I answered yes, I was told, "That's Mr. Bones. He took his own life a few years ago, but he still hangs around." I still get goosebumps thinking about it. That last one is kind of sad. But I would never, ever, ever work the night shift. No, ma'am.
Weird spooky story time. Dating horror stories. Date seemed to be going great. Then the little red flags I saw before came to fruition. It wasn't the girl's fault or mine. And as I type this, for all I know, one of them has found my post and my Reddit name somehow. We walked back to my car at the restaurant we went to first. We had walked to a coffee shop after. She told me she had actually parked in a different lot. I thought it was slightly odd, especially in hindsight, but it may have been, as she said, that the restaurant parking is usually busy. She gets in my car so I can drive her legit 1 block over. The second she does, her phone rings. She answers and probably regrets it now. Her mom is screaming at her. Note, this woman I'm on a date with is 27. I can hear her mom yelling, and she is somewhat responding to her, but also trying to play it off in front of me. Then I hear, "Get out of the car now." It clicked for me fast what was happening. The girl hangs up and says, "Don't worry, just drive me to my car." I say, "I heard what she said. Let's walk." We do, and of course, we are both painfully aware now that this 27-year-old woman's parents were spying on our first date. That is so embarrassing. If my parents were spying me on a first date when I was pushing 30 years old, boy, run. Run. As a mom, I understand like being protective of your daughter, but there's a very fine line between being protective and being overbearing. It was a dating app date, but my God, just drop your location pin or something, right? Check my Facebook. The amount of people that could easily find me if I touched a hair on her head is ridiculous. The app would show it. Phone records were new Facebook friends. She told them the area we were in. Don't effing follow us. She tries to somewhat justify it on the verge of tears, telling me how their family had a stalker years ago. I mean, I can understand the fear, but oh my gosh, don't ruin your daughter's dating life. I know they're well off and stuff, so maybe they don't trust people. This ish was heartbreaking. Asking if there will still be a second date, talking about how her parents ruined a good thing for her. I'm trying to comfort her, and I still give her a slight kiss on the cheek when she clearly is expecting a real one. She even asks for a real kiss after, and I like pecked her. Oh my God, this poor girl. I was nearly trying to make it a bad kiss. She's holding together well, but I know when I leave she is going to cry. Then call her parents to scream at them. Most heartbreaking thing I've ever had to do is to be honest there that I'm not sure about a second date. My walk back to my car was horrible. I knew they must still be watching me. I didn't know how to stand, what I looked like to them, etc. Even driving away, I felt like I was going to be followed. My gut was right that she looked oddly close to family before going, just from seeing her social media. I thought I was going to be a judgmental, but your gut is right. This last part is pure conspiracy that I don't even really believe, but they put me in a paranoid mindset for the rest of the day. I'd be so paranoid too. Like, what the heck? Imagine like somebody gets in your car and they immediately get a phone call. Like, how close are they? Are they following you? Like, really? Now I question everything that happened today. Before the date, I saw some guy in my neighborhood that almost looked like an obvious private investigator. I made this joke in my head but wasn't serious about it, even though I passed him while he was walking the other way, and he had later come back towards my way as I got in my car to head to the date. No, I don't think this was a PI. I won't exaggerate that much, but let's just say those effers got so paranoid from watching us that the chances of that being an actual PI went from 0.01% to nearly a 10% chance in my head. That's how uncomfortable they made me feel. I hope they know that. She did text me that she laid into them after and such, but I don't think I could ever trust a second date with her, which is too bad. She seemed very nice and pretty. I only hope this experience will change them for her so that she can normally date and have normal relationships. So I know this wasn't like a spooky story, but this is a really weird one for sure. Imagine going on a date with some girl and then finding out that her parents are like actually watching you. Have you guys ever seen the episode of Family Guy where Peter's like in disguises watching Meg's dates? He's like Pita? I don't know any Pita. And she's like, I didn't say Peter, I said Dad. I don't know. I strayed. Anyway, if any of you have had a weird, spooky dating story, send it my way.
One of my followers sent this story in to me the other day, and it blows my mind. I can't even imagine if something like this would ever happen to me. So this woman says that in December of 1977, her mother had drowned. At the time, this girl was 7 years old, and she said that her mother had a history of epileptic seizures, but there was some suspicion that it might have actually been the stepfather that may have had something to do with it. Fast forward to 2009, and this woman's husband took her for her birthday to go and see where her mother's grave was. So they got there, they found the gravesite relatively easily, and they kind of hung out there for a while and just relaxed. And then they decided that they wanted to go and check out the last place that her mother was seen alive, which was in their childhood home. She says it was pretty difficult to find the house at first, but then they did eventually find it. So her intent was getting there and just taking some pictures around the old property. So when they got there, they parked, and she did just that. She grabbed her camera and she walked up to the home. She said when she approached, she noticed the house was seafoam green and the window had curtains in it that were closed, but the door was open. So she's taking pictures around, and then she goes right in front of the door to take another picture, and then she notices something. She said there was a woman sitting inside on a single chair, and she looked up at her and said, "Hello, what can I do for you?" Okay, so she never gets up out of the chair, but she gestured for them to come in. The husband walks up behind her, they walk through the door, and they start talking to this woman for a little while. So as they're talking, she explains how her mother had lived here and passed here, and that this used to be their childhood home. And then the woman would go on to tell her that her husband also had passed there a year or two prior, and she just couldn't bring herself to leave the place. So they talked about so many things, including the weather, or the age that she was when she used to live there, or why she's there now. And then after about 20 minutes or so, her and her husband decided it was time to go. She thanked the woman for letting them inside and for letting them take pictures, and she even asked her, could she take a picture of the woman, and she agreed. As they were leaving, she shook the woman's hand and said goodbye, and then her and her husband turned around and left. So once they got to the car, she realized that she forgot her camera back at the house because she had set it down when she went to shake the woman's hand. Okay, get this. So she goes back to the house to get the camera, and when she gets there, she notices the front door is no longer open. There are no longer curtains in the window, and when she peered inside, there was no chair and no woman. The house was completely abandoned, and her camera was now sitting outside on the front porch. So she grabs her camera and goes back to the car where her husband was waiting. She tells her husband what happened, and with chills running up and down her spine now, they are headed back to the hotel that they were staying at. When they got back, she was immediately looking through the pictures that she took. They were all there, and then she uploaded them to her computer. So the next day, she goes to send these photos to her aunt, who also lived with them in that childhood home. And when she went in to look, there were no pictures, not on the camera and not on the computer. They were completely gone. She saw them vividly the day before on both devices, and now gone. And listen, she believes that this very well could have been her mother. And the funny thing about it, though, is that she said that this woman looked kind of like a combination of her mother and her grandmother. She was older than her mother would have been when she passed, but something inside just really felt like that was her mother, who was kind of waiting for her to greet her back home. She says that she's never found those photos since, and she cannot explain how that all happened, but I feel like there's some kind of a comfort knowing that she got to kind of see her mom again. That is such a wild story. Very emotional, very powerful. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, because I'm sure she'll be in there checking them out. And if you have a creepy or spooky story of your own, I would love to hear it. And if you're new here, don't forget to follow for more creepy story time.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity. Featuring my bracelet. It comes with a necklace as well, but I haven't been wearing the necklace as much. I wear this bracelet every single day. No exaggeration. Hasn't turned my wrist green. I love it. And I actually get complimented on it all the time. Now onto the story. My story starts before we even moved into our new apartment. We were only touring it. The apartment was so much nicer than what I used to live in, but the second our car drove by the sign of the complex's name, I got a very, very bad feeling. Trust your fucking gut. My mom brushed me off, and told me it's just me being nervous to move, but I knew that it wasn't that. Fast forward a few months, we moved in and my mom was getting ready for work while I was across the apartment in my room when I heard her call out my name. Oh no. No, no, no. She looked a bit freaked out and said that she had never said anything, but that she herself has heard her name be called out as well. Let's just say I hated being home alone while she was at work that day. I wouldn't be. I would be waiting on the fucking doorstep all day long until she got home. Kiss my ass. Fast forward a few weeks and I woke up super thirsty. My bedroom door was the only one on that side of the apartment and it faced the kitchen. My mom was asleep, so the apartment was dark and I couldn't see anything. I turned on my bedroom light to help me get to the kitchen light switch, but as soon as I flicked it on and looked up, I saw a little girl, probably about 2 or 3, in a Victorian era dress with lace and frills standing at the entrance of the kitchen, staring right at me. Bitch, don't look at me. Right then and there, I had to shit my britches. Right then and there, friends. She was clutching some type of stuffed bear doll. I couldn't really tell from the distance. Then with the fear pumping through me, unsure of if I should scream for my mom or run back to my bedroom and close the door. I say all of the above. Maybe also set the place ablaze. That could also be an option. Call a priest? I couldn't run from my mom as I would have to get closer to that thing to get her, so I opted to slam my door and run under my covers. That works, I guess. From that night forward, for almost 10 years, I would cover my head to sleep at night even after we moved out. We only lasted in that apartment for a year. The second the lease was up, we left quickly. Glad that Mom started to believe you after she experienced it herself. There was so much more that happened there, but these are the only super fresh memories. And just to note, I am an only child, so this couldn't have been a sibling playing a prank on me in any of these situations. Oh, I believe you, friend. As soon as you say 2 or 3 years old in a Victorian era dress, I believe you immediately. You know, fuck that. Fuck all of that. Rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. If you have your own spooky story that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. I'm sorry I've been so absent. There has been a lot going on. I've been moving stuff in and out of places, unfortunately, going through a lot of different changes, trying to get my shit together so I can be 100% back on social media. I'm going to try that from now on. So hopefully I will be a lot more consistent. If not, the next couple of days in the next week or so for certain. My birthday is next Wednesday, so I'm hoping that I can get my shit together by then. Or at least a little bit. I'll see you all the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
What do you think about the whole disappearance of Savannah Guthrie's mom? Like, this whole case is just creepy. Now, I've followed a little bit of it. It doesn't seem like there's been too much evidence that's came out. There's a lot of people sharing false information, but it doesn't really make sense. Why would they go after this elderly woman who has all these medical conditions? You know, if it was targeted and they were going to hold her for ransom, it doesn't really make sense because it's not safe. Something could happen to her because she takes all these medications. And they actually left those in the house. It doesn't seem like the family has any sort of drama going on. Doesn't seem like there's money involved. It's just really, really strange. And on top of that, it doesn't seem like they know what exactly happened. They just know that she disappeared. I think there was evidence of a struggle. And it looks like a few of the cameras, like a Ring doorbell, had been taken. Now, you have to understand, this case mimics hundreds of other cases in that area of people that have disappeared in strange manners. Now, I've spoke on this subject several times, and I believe this might be along the lines of something supernatural. And I think other people think the same thing. I don't really want to mention it, but we know exactly what this area is. In Arizona, the Native Americans spoke of it, and I think it's very possible that it could be connected to that. But yeah, it's just a very, very strange disappearance. And my heart goes out to the family. I hope they find her. I hope everything's okay. But I'm just curious to hear your guys' opinions and thoughts on the whole thing, because it is very strange. The spider deer is something that just started to appear in the past 20 years. You've seen a lot of reports of these things in the Appalachian region and the Ozarks. Now, there was this man named Chris. Chris said him and his buddies were in northern Arkansas doing some four-wheeling. Now, they were on this 100 acres of land that's situated up against the Ozark Mountains. And he said as him and his buddies were going through these trails, he ended up getting separated from them. And he found himself on sort of this remote, small little trail that cut through the forest. Said as he's going down this trail, he sees up ahead this wild pig. And it's just sitting there. And it's squealing. All of a sudden, he hears this loud scream. And this crashing sound come through the woods. And out of the wood line pops this very large deer. But it has 8 legs. It has more than 2 eyes. And it is moving like a spider. It grabs this pig and starts dragging away. So he immediately tries to turn his four-wheeler around and go in the opposite direction. But this thing catches wind of him and it starts pursuing him. And for about a half a mile, this thing chased him and kept pace with him, and then eventually broke off and went into the woods. And he said still from time to time, when they go out to this area, they can hear the screams of this thing.
When I was 18, my mom passed away. It was very hard on the family, and I had not experienced grief or loss before, so I ended up falling into some bad habits. I dreamt about her in the first few months, where I would be having a completely different dream, and then it would shift, and she would be there, and I would hold her and tell her how I missed her. It was a comfort, and I truly believed she was coming to actually visit me. These dreams stalked for years, and if I did dream of her, it would be a normal dream where she was in the background. And eventually, I stopped having dreams with her in them all together. At one point, I'm living alone in this small apartment, and all of a sudden, I started seeing these dark shadows on the top corners of my bedroom walls. It was a regular room, my bed in the middle, door to my left. As I'm laying there, I see something dark, kind of sliding down the wall. These shadows didn't have a form, honestly looked like black vapor. I would think to myself, oh, maybe it's coming from outside, maybe the glare from my phone, or the moon, etc. But at this point, I had been living here long enough to know that this was definitely different. At this time, I started having terrifying sleep paralysis. I would dream of those shadow vapor things coming down my wall and feeling something on top of me that I couldn't see. And all I could do was move my eyes and try to mouth El Padre Nuestro. Eventually, I would wake up shaking and go to the living room and watch something for the rest of the night. This went on for a few weeks. I would sleep with a cross. I would pray before bed, and it kept happening. I would go maybe 2 days with peace, and then it would be back. No activity anywhere else. One night, I was in the middle of one of these dreams, and I was terrified, trying to mouth a prayer, but I couldn't say it. Like, I couldn't remember the words to it. Then, all of a sudden, my door slams open, and it was my mom. She was standing there in her favorite mandil, apron, holding a broom. And Daisy, she went to work. She started smacking the wall next to her, screaming in Spanish, "Órale, hijos de su madre, se me salen de aquí, váyanse a la..." Translating roughly to "get out of here, you sons of..." She was smacking the walls with the broom and saying all of this. And I kid you not, I saw these vapor shadow things go towards the open door. I still couldn't move, just moving my eyes from her to the shadows and back. These things went out the door, and she gave me one last look, and slammed the door shut. When the door slammed, I woke up after not having seen her in my dreams for years, and seeing her for that brief glimpse. I was bawling my eyes out, and I just kept thanking her over and over. When I tell you, I have not experienced those dreams since, either I have gotten better at protecting myself, or she really came back one last time to protect me.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This took place around 2013 or 2014 in central Illinois. There's a place here called Greenwood Cemetery, and the locals call it the most haunted cemetery in the area. So naturally, we went at night. 3 friends and I had convinced the caretaker to let us in around 9, promising that we'd be respectful and gone by midnight. The gates closed behind us, and the cemetery went quiet in a way that felt watched. At one point in the night, 2 of my friends had wandered off to look for the Greenwood bride. She's a ghost, said to have drowned herself on her wedding day after learning her fiancé had been killed. The rest of us just kept walking. Eventually, we all met back up at a small mausoleum. The door was unlocked. The name McCoy was carved at the top. Someone suggested we should go inside one at a time, 5 minutes each, with a recorder, just to see if anything or anyone would respond. The first round we tried, none of us got anything, so we ended up going again. I went in. The mausoleum was tiny, barely enough room to stand. I set my phone down, hit record, and started asking questions into the still air. Normal questions like, is anyone here? Can you hear me? What's your name? And then I asked one I think I shouldn't have. Are you hurt over what happened? I didn't hear a voice, but I did hear 3 slow taps on the wall behind me. I laughed it off, called out my friend's name, and ended the recording. I stepped back outside. A little while later, while walking through the section where the Civil War soldiers were buried, I played the recording back. At first, there was only silence, and right after I asked, "Are you hurt?" a faint child's voice whispered to me, "They did awful things to me." Immediately after that, a different voice, a man's voice, whispered directly into the phone, "Behind you." And then 3 taps echoed through the recording. We left right at midnight. No one spoke much on the way home, and to this day, out of all of my paranormal experiences, this one still feels the clearest, the most intentional, like something knew we were listening.
The one Bigfoot story that stayed with me is this case out of Washington. There was this man named Bo. Him and his buddy, they went on this hunting trip, and they were in the Mount St. Helens area. They stayed at this cabin. Now, Bo had this very large Tibetan Mastiff, and this cabin had similar incidents where they had some sort of animal that had gotten inside of it. Well, Bo said the first night they're at this cabin, they began to hear sounds hitting the side of this house. And when they would go outside to investigate, they couldn't find anything. They said all night long they could hear stuff pelting the side of this cabin, and they had no idea what was going on. So this happens a couple nights in a row. And finally, the last night they're there, Bo goes to bed. And as he's asleep, he wakes up to his dog alerting to something. And the dog instantly runs to the front door and starts barking. So as he approaches the front door, he opens it. The dog begins to just go crazy. And it was like it was alerted to something outside, but Bo couldn't see anything. So he just figured it was some type of animal or something. He closes the door, and the dog just remained set on right in front of the door. So Bo goes back to sleep, and about 20-30 minutes later, he hears his dog come in the bedroom. And he's sniffing really hard, and he's kind of moving around like he's getting into stuff. Finally, the dog comes over to the side of the bed, and Bo notices this very strong stench. As he reaches down to pet the dog, he realizes this isn't my dog. He flips the lights on, And that's when he sees what he describes as a Bigfoot-like creature on all fours crawling around the room. He jumps up, he runs out of the cabin. Him and his friend, they leave immediately. The next day, he comes back looking for his dog, and they find that the cabin has been completely destroyed. But when he goes to search for his dog, they end up finding this thing up in a tree. It's completely mangled. And they realized something had attacked it at night and then came inside that cabin. Do you know why something evil has to ask permission to come into your house? It sort of goes back to this old belief that nothing evil, nothing negative can enter into your life, can enter into your home unless you give it permission. See, we naturally have this protective barrier surrounding us. Some people call it guardian angels. Some people call it, a protective spirit. But we are naturally protected from these sort of things. But these evil, these negative entities try and break us down and get us to open that space, to allow them to come in. And so our homes, where we live, where we love, where we share intimate moments, right? That becomes a protective space. And this evil entity cannot enter through that doorway until you give it permission. Now, this story comes out of North Carolina. There was this woman who said when she was a young girl, she grew up in a small home up in the Appalachian Mountains. And she said when they first moved into this house, she remembers at night hearing what sounded like young children out in the woods laughing and saying things and calling her to come outside. And she would see shadows moving across her window like someone was walking around out there. She just ignored it, and she really had no idea what was going on. And she had heard stories, she had heard rumors from friends, that if anything evil comes to your door or invites you outside, do not listen to them, do not follow. Well, this one particular night, her parents left her in charge of watching her brothers and sisters. And she said they were running around the house playing when all of a sudden she got kind of this sick feeling in her stomach, like something was wrong. And she said her brother started screaming and started freaking out and crying. And she's like, what's going on? Like, what's wrong? And he says, they're coming. They're coming for us. Like, they're going to get us. They're coming. And she's like, what are you talking about? Who's coming? And he just kept saying, like, they're coming. They're coming. And all of a sudden, they hear boom, 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 like a knock at the front door. So she runs over to the window and she looks out. And she said at the front door was this young boy, with an old-timey haircut and wearing sort of like this blue jacket and blue pants with these like black boots. And she said he just looked out of place. She knew something was wrong. So she calls out to him from behind the door. Yes, like, what do you want? What do you need? And she said this boy responded, please, let me in. Please, let me in. And she's like, no, I'm not supposed to open the door. Mom and Dad are gone. Like, I can't open the door for you. And he's like, please, it's cold. Let me in. And she said, no, you're going to have to go somewhere else. I'm not opening the door. And right as she says that, the lights in the house started to flicker. And she said she took her brothers and sisters, they ran into their mother's room, and she closed the door, and they all just started praying. And finally, their parents got home, and they felt safe again. And she said within a couple weeks, it was all over this town that there was a young kid who disappeared. And she felt like that had something to do with whoever was knocking on the door then.
I don't know what kind of lashes I'm gonna do, but do my lashes with me while I tell you guys about when my middle school was being haunted by spirits. So I could do either these three. I think I might do the one in the middle. Or I could do these, but I don't really like how these look. When I was in middle school, I don't even remember like how old I was. I probably was like, I want to say, oh, you're fucking lying. How the fuck on my vanity, bro? So I used to go to like this after school program for the school that I went to, and like it was me, my best friend at the time. It was a lot of us that was going. Like, I had a big friend group. I think like it was 7 or 8 of us, but I can't even multitask. But yeah, so at first it started with, I think, like 3 of us going to the after school program. And then eventually on some days all of us would go. But for the most part, a lot of us didn't go. I just know I constantly was there because, like, there would be nothing else for me to do. Obviously, we used to be there till late. Like, we used to not get out till, I think, 7 o'clock. So, like, a lot of the rooms, like, were empty and the lights were off and stuff. And, like, I used to want to explore. What the fuck? Yeah, so like I was saying, a lot of the rooms would be empty and the lights would be off. And I always wanted to, like, go around the school and, like, see if something spooky would happen after school hours, right? So it was one, like, regular school day that I was chilling and I was with one of the friends. I don't even remember which friend it was, but we was talking to one of the either home monitors or teachers, and I was asking them, like, do anything spooky be happening when, like, kids wasn't there? And they would be like, a lot of the janitors would say that they, like, heard laughing or heard kids in a closet, but when they checked the closet, kids wasn't over there. They will also say they heard like balls being played with in the gym when they was cleaning the gym, but, like, they know for a fact nobody was around. They also was saying that the place was haunted. And when I asked, like, how do you know the place is haunted besides the activity that you're telling me, the person proceeds to say that the school was built on a cemetery. So I'm like, what? And then they proceed to tell me, like, a lot of the schools in the area that we live in are built on cemeteries. Like, it's so many, like, graveyards underneath us. And I was like, that's weird. Oh, I literally can't multitask. But yeah, I was just like, that's really scary. And after that, I was just going crazy. I'm telling everybody in school that the school is built on a cemetery and that the janitors and stuff is, like, hearing and seeing shit. You know, they could have been lying to me, like, saying anything, you know, to scare me, being that I was that young and I was asking those questions. The reason I feel like partially it was true is because, number one, a lot of the schools I later on found out were built on cemeteries. And two, it was this one day that I think I got a new phone, and it was me and one of my, like, YT friends. We was on Snapchat using the little cute Snapchat filters, and while we using them, like, it's both of us in the frame, so the filter is on both of us, but, like, right on the side of us, because this was her head, this was my head, right on the side of us, we seen another filter on something that was not there. And, like, there was books and stuff behind us, but it wasn't as small as, like, one of the faces on the books. It was big, and it was, like, up close, and it was moving, like, yeah, it was moving my camera, but it would be, like, moving from back here to move it up. Like, you would literally see it move up. It wouldn't even, like, be right here and then be right here next. She got spooked out after it happened because I was telling her all the things that I was hearing about the school. And I think, like, once or twice I was playing Manhunt. You guys know, like, I love playing Manhunt. We was playing Manhunt after school hours with the after school program. And in the middle of us playing, I think I was it. So I hear a whole bunch of kids running into a bathroom. Mind you, you know, it's like girls' bathroom and boys' bathroom. So, like, we not supposed to be in the same bathroom. But I heard everybody run into the same bathroom. I go check to see what bathroom everybody ran in. And when I go in the bathroom, nobody is there. So I get freaked out. Mind you, it's no teachers on this floor. It's no staffs on this floor. Like, there's no rooms for you to do, like, whatever activity for after school. Like, it was just supposed to be us on this floor. And I checked, like, one of the rooms that was open to see if they ran in there instead of the bathroom. Nobody was there. Like, it was so fucking scary. So the spikes was not working. It was really pissing me off. But these are how the lashes came out. They're getting stuck a little bit because of the glue, so don't mind that. But yeah.
This is the most color I've worn in a very long time. And it's technically not even really color. But I just want to say I will be taking a break for a couple days on my paranormal experiences, on sharing them. Probably until Monday. Might just take Friday and the weekend. The nightmares are back. The nightmares are back, unfortunately. My brain dreams up this fictionary haunted house every single night that I talk about these stories, and I'm trapped in it. And I can feel everything that I'm feeling in this dream. And it's terrifying. And there's paranormal activity happening all around me. And I can't escape it. Sometimes my family's there, sometimes they're not. It's just this house that my mind created. It's these scenarios that my mind created, but it's always the same house. So I think I'm going to take that as a sign to ground myself and just take a little break. I'm getting really tired of the nightmares every single night. Yeah, you know, it is what it is, unfortunately. I've always been somebody where energy that's trapped will find me. Ever since I was 6 years old, in my grandmother, RIP, in my grandmother's home. Ever since I was 6 years old, I've always seemed to be a magnet for things that we can't see and things that we can't understand and things that we can see living in our closet, attracting to me. And with the nightmares reoccurring every single night, same place, same actions, I'm gonna take a little step back for a couple days and regroup and share some more stories on Monday. But I think that's what's best. I think that's what's best. I don't want to be trapped in dreamland. Thank you for understanding. So it turns out I've been mistaken this whole time. I was talking to my family about my TikTok videos, about sharing my experiences of when we lived in Japan, and I was talking to my sister about them. And I asked her, did you really never experience anything? And I'm not sure if it was my experiences that I shared, or maybe it was time for her, I don't know. But she did. And I feel bad about it because she was really young in that house, you guys, and she never said anything to anybody ever about it, which is wild. And she's 24 years old and she's finally talking about it, and I have permission to share because she's not on TikTok. TikTok is not her thing. She's like the only 24-year-old not on TikTok. But let's get into it. When she would sleep in her room, now her room is right across from mine. Remember, upstairs is our bedrooms, and then downstairs in the bottom of the basement is the parents' bedroom and their master bath. So she would be sleeping in her room at night, and apparently she didn't really get good sleep. There would be a whisper in her ear. Most nights, something would whisper in her ear while she was sleeping, and she would wake up. She'd always scan her room looking around because she would wake up scared, you guys. And one night, she was telling me that when she was looking around her room, in the corner was a shadow. But a very, very tall, excuse me, a very, very tall, skinny shadow. And when she saw the shadow, she freaked out. And she went to my room and she crawled in my bed. And that pulled a memory that I have, because I remember waking up one morning, turning over and seeing her in my bed. And I was like, Charlie, what are you doing here? And she's like, oh, I couldn't sleep. And I thought nothing of it at the time. I thought nothing of it. And I told her, I said, the night that you crawled into my bed, I was like, is that the night that you saw it when I saw you in the morning? And she said, yes. That something was whispering in her ears while she was sleeping. And that she saw a very tall, skinny shadow. I said, well, how tall was it? She said it had to have been, it was well over 6 feet. She said it felt like it was almost 7 feet. Remember, she's really little at the time. She's like 5 years old. So for her, that's extremely tall. And it was always in the same corner of her bedroom. Now, not every time did she see it, did she go to my bed. Sometimes she would roll over and go under the covers, poke her head up, and it would be gone. And I asked her, I said, well, what was the whispering? Did it make any sense to you? What language was it? She said that she could never figure out what it was saying, but that it woke her up often. And I asked her, I was like, why didn't you say anything to anybody? Like, why are we keeping this to ourselves, right? Like, especially when it's happening. She said that she felt like nobody would believe her. So it turns out everybody had experiences. My stepfather was in denial that anything was ever happening. We will never get experiences out of him. But yeah, it turns out my sister did have her own experiences. And I've been wrong this whole time until very recently when I talked with her.
This is probably one of Norway's most infamous cases, and it's of the Eastall woman. Nobody knows who she is. On November 29th of 1970, two young girls and their father were working several miles away from Bergen, Norway. It was there that they found a woman who was burning. She was laying on her back and she had been burnt beyond recognition. So they walked back to the town and told police. When police arrived, the first thing that they smelled was the stench of the burning body, and it was overwhelming, it was awful, and it was a really hard climb to get there. Like, it wasn't just off a hiking trail, like, she was deep in the woods. When they arrived at the scene, some of the police officers thought that maybe she had fallen into a fire by accident and then jumped back in surprise because of how she was sitting. She was kind of in like a fighting position with her arms outstretched, but this, I guess, is pretty typical for people who have passed away in a fire. Close to her body, they found several of her items. They were clothing, an umbrella, 2 melted plastic bottles, half a bottle of liquor, and a plastic cover for a passport, and a couple more items. All of the items that could have pointed to who she was, they were all scratched off or removed. So like the names from the bottles were removed. And any clothing items, like where they came from, the tags, they were all removed as well, which is kind of strange. She also had some jewelry that was next to her. She wasn't wearing it. It was just laying next to her. It almost appeared as if it had been some kind of ceremony. Nobody knew who this woman was. They could tell that she was between 25 and 40 years old. She had long brownish black hair, a round face, and brown eyes and small ears. At the time that she was found, she was wearing her hair in a ponytail that was tied back with a blue and white print ribbon. Just a few days after her body was found, there were 2 suitcases that were left at the Bergen railway station's luggage department, and this was found to be her luggage. Inside, they found some prescription-free glasses that did have a fingerprint on the lens, and this fingerprint did belong to the woman that they had found. But it wasn't just a fingerprint that they found. They also found like eczema bottles, a hairbrush, a comb, wigs, clothing, currency from Germany, Norway, Belgium, England, and Sweden. But again, any label that could have identified who she was removed. Like, her name was scratched off the eczema tube. The clothing manufacturer was ripped off of her clothes. Like, all the tags were ripped off. Like, it was really strange. But on top of that, they also found like a coded message in her belongings, and they believe that they have cracked this code and that it is telling her where she's staying the night, like which hotel she stayed at. They did find some boots, and they were able to track down where these boots came from. And when they went to this specific store, the owner's son was there, and he remembered her coming in. He said that they were a pair of boots. The woman had come in. She was very well dressed, nice looking, but she took a very long time to choose her boots. Using this as a base point, they were able to kind of track down which hotel she was staying at, but she had checked in under a false name. That was the name of Valina Norch. With this, they were able to find that she had stayed at multiple hotels, but each time it appeared that she had used an alias or a different name. So this didn't help them at all either. Now, this is what has led people to believe that maybe she was a spy of some kind. This all happened during, or kind of around the time of the Cold War. They also suggested that some of her movements were lining up with the Norwegian Penguin missiles in the 1960s. Now, when an autopsy was done, they were able to find that there were smoke particles in her lung, meaning that she was still alive when the fire had started. She also had a bruise on her neck that they thought she suffered from a fall of some kind, but she had not been sick. They also found 50 to 70 sleeping pills in her stomach, but not all of them had been absorbed. So her cause of passing was considered carbon monoxide poisoning along with the sleeping pills, like she had overdosed. So they started to believe that she had done this to herself. Now, many people have accepted the fact that she might have done this to herself, but some of the police officers that were working on the case, most of them have passed since, but most of the police officers that were working on her case refused to believe that she had done this to herself and that someone had done this to her. But as of today, this case is completely unsolved. So what are your thoughts on it? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and follow for more true crime.
I could tell what was going to happen to this couple just by looking at this photo. It was the middle of summer in Aberdeen in 1978 when a body was found in a ground floor flat. It was a absolutely horrifying scene, a bloodbath. This young woman lay there with over 20 injuries to her head and face. This was no accident. Somebody had wanted her dead. She was Brenda Paige, a ray of sunshine to everybody who knew her. She was only 32, but she was already so successful, incredibly intelligent. She actually had a PhD in genetics. It was while studying in Glasgow that she'd actually met her future husband, Christopher Harrison. And it didn't take long for the couple to make things official and tie the knot in 1972. But there was trouble in paradise. When Brenda chatted to her friends and family, she was like, I'm just not happy. She was like, I'm constantly treading on eggshells. I feel like he's volatile. He's never happy no matter what I do. And she started opening up more and more to her family and friends, and eventually confessed that he'd actually been physically violent to her. Her loved ones were super supportive. They did everything that you would want them to do. They really encouraged her to be on her own, leave him, get out of the relationship, do what's best for you. So after 4 years of hell in this volatile relationship, she decided to put herself first and she filed for divorce. But it wasn't easy. I mean, divorces are expensive, and it was incredibly difficult for Brenda to just start a new life. She was now having to pay for everything on her own. Even though she was a doctor, she was still struggling. So she decided to get a second job for a bit of extra cash as an escort. And her big sister was a bit worried, as you would be. She was like, I don't want you to be in any dangerous situations. But Brenda was like, don't be so old-fashioned. I actually found this job in the newspaper. Like, it's all above board. And she was finally able to be free and do nice things and go to nice places again. But when her body was found on the blood-soaked mattress, the community was devastated. Her poor neighbour, Dr. Douglas, who knew her really well, was actually asked to identify her body, and he was totally traumatized by the whole thing. He said, I was absolutely horrified, and it stayed with him for his entire life. Now, when police got there, they said that the killer must have got in by forcing a window open, and the really creepy part is that the killer may have actually lay in wait inside the apartment until she got home. This is honestly my absolute worst nightmare. So was it a random stranger who killed her, somebody she met via the escort agency,
or the violent ex-husband? Well, infuriatingly, we wouldn't find out for over 30 years. Although the police did their best, they collected over 200 statements. They sent divers into the river to try and find maybe a discarded murder weapon somewhere. They put posters everywhere. Everything came to a dead end. Christopher the ex was originally questioned pretty early on, but there was barely any DNA technology back then and he just denied everything. Till March 2020. And honestly, I don't know, maybe somebody's watching this that thinks that they've gotten away with a crime, but let me tell you, the clock is always ticking. It's only a matter of time before you get found out. Police announced a 79-year-old man had been arrested and 800 pieces of evidence had been collected. And who was that 79-year-old man, you ask? It was Christopher. At his trial, they revealed sickeningly that his liquid, if you know what I mean, was found at the crime scene, and a witness actually ended up testifying that Christopher had told them he had intentions to kill Brenda. Like, I feel like that's probably a piece of information that you should have come forward with a lot sooner. Handwritten letters were also found from Christopher to Brenda admitting that he was violent towards her and that she was scared of him, which totally contradicted everything he said in the trial about them having a perfect marriage. I guess one of the nails in the coffin for Christopher in terms of this evidence was that flakes of green paint were found at the crime scene that matched the paint inside Christopher's car. Finally, aged 82, he was found guilty and given life, but loads of people are arguing like that's actually too late. Do you guys think this is too late? Is it ever too late to get justice? Because I guess he has been free for like the best years of his life.